Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. Today we're back on the Heng Tiger 1. In the last video we had a look at some of the bits I've got to build up the tank. This time, surprise surprise, we're going to start the build. I'm going to do a dry build first, no Loctite, just to make sure everything fits and runs nicely. Then it will all come apart for some paint. Now, the instruction sheet that comes with the Tajan chassis is pretty awful. However, there is a kit of the Tiger 1 from IMEX which uses the same chassis, and while it's still a pretty naff manual, it has just enough detail to work out what to do. You can download the manual from IMEX. I will stick a link in the description. Okay then, today's goal is to make a rolling chassis, mostly using the parts we saw in the last video. First up, the back panel just slots into the back of the chassis. The fit isn't great, but it's good enough. From the metal parts bag we need this little widget, the low profile screw from the same bag, and the small bushing. From the main screws bag we need to dig out a matching screw for the other side. Starting on the right side, or starboard maybe, tank people seem to like nautical terms, fit one of the screws in the hole. Make sure the back panel is fully seated and do it up nice and snug. For the other side we need to slip the bushing over the screw and the metal bit over that. Offer it up to the hole and do up the screw. The end with the hook runs on the slider for the upper hole release. It's just there so you can comfortably get at it when the tracks are fitted. Quite a neat little arrangement. Next up we'll fit the gearboxes. Each one needs 3 screws, a self-tapper that threads into the blind hole in the plastic, and 2 machine screws that thread into the steel plate. The first machine screw goes in easy enough. The threads are a bit tight, but that won't hurt. The second machine screw is a bit of a pain though. It sits partially obscured under one of the gears. With a bit of juggling you can line it up though. Just be careful not to get it cross-threaded. The front self-tapper goes straight in, just don't over-tighten it. Of course, the second gearbox is the same, just a mirror image. Nice. Right, electronics tray next. Mine's a bit warped, but it kinda fits okay. The posts need to line up with the hole in the aluminium, and they nearly do. Close enough you can get the 4 self-tappers in. It will be tempting to replace the screws in the bottom of the hull with some countersunk screws. With the already fairly low ground clearance I can see these cheeseheads getting caught up in the terrain. This bit should be fun, the wheels. So many wheels. I thought it was bad enough with the Cross RC MC8 wheels. This guy has 16. There's 2 types that interleave. It's probably a good idea to get them set up in order ready to fit. The front wheel is the one with a longer boss. Each wheel of course needs one of the axles with a plain end. I'm going to use a little bit of ceramic grease, just a smear. Now the fit on these parts isn't brilliant. You have to press the axle through the wheel with quite a bit of force. Once in though, they run quite freely. There's a small issue getting the axle into the swing arm. It feels a lot like the end of the axle isn't as smooth as it could be. You could round the end with a file, no doubt it would slide in far easier. Either way, fitting the wheels will take quite a while. Looking at the length of the clip, it took me about 15 minutes to do one side. It's worth it though, it's really starting to look quite meaty. Nice. But there's another side to do, like so. Next we've got the box I was missing from the last video. Inside we've got a bag marked HL for fitting the bits to the stock chassis, and the other bag for fitting to this chassis. In the big bag we've got some metal idler wheels. There's also some drive sprockets, but we'll get to those later. The idlers come in 2 halves with a separate axle. You'll need the small self-tappers. Just like the road wheels, it's a good idea to use just a little bit of grease on the axle before it goes in. It takes a bit of force, so like the other axles, the end is a bit rough. It'll do the job though. The other half of the wheel roughly lines up on some ridges. Then the 2 self-tappers hold the assembly together. The use of self-tappers into metal doesn't exactly fill me with joy. However, when they're fully seated, the assembly does feel very solid, and the alignment looks pretty good. Both the idlers go together just the same way. Just be careful not to over tighten them and strip out the metal. Sprockets next. Now I already have a metal set on the Heng chassis, so I could just use them. But the Tajan ones have nice metal hubcaps, which seems like a good reason to use them instead. They split in 2, the inner half just slides over the drive shafts. Next we're going to need some tracks. Now there's a couple of ways of getting the tracks off the Heng chassis. You can push out one of the pins and split the tracks, but I found it easier to pop off one of the little hubcaps on the drive sprockets, remove the screw, run the outer half around the track and then remove it, which just about gives enough slack you can jiggle the track over the idler wheel and remove the track in one piece. Fitting them on the new chassis is a little bit trickier. There's a lot less give in the metal part, so you can't really jiggle it around as easily. I ended up popping the tracks over the road wheels, fitting the outer half of the sprockets with its split washer and screw, doing it up nice and tight. It's a steel screw into a steel thread, so it can take quite a bit of torque. Then I slotted the idler wheel into the track and rolled it round to the mounting point and popped it in. You can just about get to the grub screw to tighten it up. Just need to do the other side and we're left with a rolling chassis. Nice. Well, so far so good. The chassis as it stands weighs in at about 10.5 pounds. To put that into perspective, our Tamiya Pajero with all its upgrades and battery is only 7 pounds or so. This tank is going to be rather weighty when it's finished. Can't wait to get this thing powered and see what it'll do, but that'll have to wait for another video. So, thanks for watching, and as always, do please hit that like button if you like the video, and of course, if you're not already, why not hit subscribe? It's free after all. Bye guys!